Okay, looks like it's time to get started. Thank you everyone for joining our live lecture today. My name is Isaac and I'll be the lead instructor for the lecture. And today's topic will be career skills. So let's go ahead and let's start off by discussing career planning. Okay, so career programmers are a lot like doctors in the way that they tend to specialize in one specific field. So, there's oncology, radiology, cardiology, right? The list goes on. And so the same thing with software programmers. They tend to specialize, okay? But if you don't know what you want to specialize in yet, that's okay. You got time to figure it out, and you can always change your specialties as time goes on too. So one technique that can be used to kind of help you figure out where where you fit in is called SWOT, and you can use 4 different factors to kind of evaluate the best fit. So let's go ahead and start with strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Let's go over all those. Okay, so strengths would be if you are a creative person, if you're motivating, energetic, dedicated, right? Those are good strengths that add value to. Whereas weaknesses would be maybe if you're impatient, outspoken, unrealistic, confrontational, that kind of thing, then that would be a weakness. Opportunities would be, what's available on the market right now, front-end engineer roles, back-end engineer roles, data scientists, right? And then threats would be stuff like criminal history, right? If do you want to work in government software, right? Will your criminal history prevent that? Unemployment's another thing, is the software field you're getting into just going to be replaced by robots or something else in a couple of years? Finances, maybe another one, maybe, you want to work at a really prestigious company and they require, really, high regarded degrees from, really good universities, things like that, and you can't afford to go, right? So maybe that would be a threat to your career goal. Okay, so these are all just kind of things to think about when you're considering which path to take. So next, let's talk about your soft skills. So the vast majority of people who become programmers have several other non-technical skills that have been acquired through previous employment and education and are transferable to the programming job. Okay, so whenever you apply for the position, just remember that everyone else applying for that position has similar skills to you as far as technical skills go. What might differentiate you from them is your soft skills, okay? Skills that don't have anything to do with your technical side. Things like interpersonal skills, how you act with others, organizational skills, how you approach tasks, leadership skills, how you motivate and direct others, and communication skills, how you communicate with others. Yeah, so now let's go ahead and focus on the tech resume, okay? So first thing we should discuss is the 3 C's of building your resume, okay? And just keep in mind that it should be clean, concise, and convincing. So when we say clean, we mean easy to read font, proofread with like Grammarly or some tool like that, and nicely presented. It should be concise, basically. All the information should be relevant to the job. It shouldn't drag on. It should be short and to the point. It should be convincing. The fact that you should showcase your skills, but you shouldn't try to oversell yourself by using maybe big inflated vocabulary that you don't normally use, right? So keep those in mind when you are building it out. Okay, and just remember that although everyone reviews resumes differently, these hiring managers all have their own little techniques. The statistics tell us that you have around 7 to 10 seconds of viewing time by a hiring manager. So the focus of the most important information should be on the top half of your resume. Okay, and we recommend these 3 things at a minimum. So your social links, such as your GitHub and your LinkedIn profile, your tech skills, and your project examples. So let's take a moment to look at a good example of a resume and a bad example of a tech resume. We'll start with the bad example. So right off the bat, you'll notice there's a big ugly blue graphic on the side of this resume, right? So no graphics, no pictures, right? Keep it all text-based and no distractions such as these. Next, you'll notice that although they did provide their GitHub link, they didn't provide LinkedIn, right? And so problem with that is if I'm a non-technical hiring manager, I'm not going to be able to evaluate you as a candidate based on your GitHub profile. So it's good to have the LinkedIn there as a backup. Next, we list tech skills, which, that's one of the things that you should put at the top half of your resume. So this is good. And then they list education before projects, okay? And that's actually wrong. You should list your projects before education. And the reason being is because you can study software until you're blue in the face. But until you actually build software, it's really hard for people to evaluate you. Okay, so in the tech industry, it's considered more proactive to put your projects before your education because they can go and they can click on a link, they can view your website, and they can get a sense of what kind of programmer you are. Versus if they just look at your degree or certification or whatever you might have, that doesn't really tell them anything. It tells them you studied somewhere, but it doesn't really tell them that you built anything, or they have nothing material to really solidify that. So make sure that you would put these in the opposite order. And then as you can see, it's over 2 pages, which is just you don't need that much. It should always be 1 page. Again, concise. They're not even going to get past the first half probably anyway. So might as well just put all the important information all summed up in a single page. Okay, so now let's look at an example of a good resume. So as you can see, no graphics, nothing like that, all text-based. First things we have up here are LinkedIn and GitHub profiles, okay? Next, we have our technical skills, right? That's correct order. And then we have our projects before our education. So you notice we didn't leave our education out, but we made sure we listed it in a specific order to make sure we capture this really relevant and important information. Okay, and as you can see, concise, clean, and I could read this and get a really good feel for who this person is as a candidate in just a few minutes, right? Because it's not overkill, but it is nice and detailed at the same time. Okay, so moving right along, let's go ahead and let's talk about 10 things never to include on your resume. So the first one being misspelled words or bad grammar. Again, there's tools like Grammarly out there that will do that stuff for free, and there's really no excuse to have that kind of errors on your resume. Number 2, never include things like personal info, such as a social security number. Remember that your resume is going to go from someone's email to their printer, and from the printer to the trash, and who knows where they could end up after that, right? So you want to make sure that you don't include any sensitive information on there. Number 3, never include things like jokes. Even if they're tech-related jokes, like you like to hack the FBI in your free time, still, you got to keep it relevant and professional to the job. Number 4, never include irrelevant work or job experience. Okay, and so some people encourage you, they'll say, hey, it's better to put some experience than no experience, especially if you're new to the tech industry. And that's actually not true. It's actually going to hurt you worse to put down, I worked at my Aunt Sally's babysitting in the summer of '03. Then just to leave it blank and say, I don't have any job experience in this particular industry. So make it relevant. Number 5, never include meaningless words that you don't normally use in your everyday vocabulary. Okay, and I've actually talked to several recruiters about this one, and they say this is a big red flag. Whenever they see someone using like old English words or words that you don't hear normal people saying, in just everyday conversation, it actually stands out to them as a red flag, because for them, it seems like you're compensating for something. Maybe the fact that you're not that good of a programmer, something to that nature. So just really be yourself, keep it professional, but, just use your regular vocabulary. Otherwise, you might get some, pullback from that. Number 6, never include reasons for leaving previous positions. Okay, so this is kind of a normal question to ask on an application or in an interview, but don't offer that information just up front because it's considered a waste of space. There's much more valuable information we can populate our resume with. Number 7, never include hobbies. Again, waste of space. There's much more valuable information that we could populate a resume with. We only have so much landscape to work with, so we really gotta, use it to its full potential. Number 8, never include salary requirements. Okay, although it's common for them to ask on maybe a job application or in the interview, don't put that on your resume because it comes off as you're only there for the money, and any company wants to believe you're there for the bigger picture is of course you're there to make a living, but you're also there to grow their company and fulfill their mission as a company. Okay, so just leave that off the resume because there's much more valuable information we can put in that place. Number 9, never include references. Again, a waste of space. They might ask for this on the job application, or upon hire, but at the end of the day, we don't want to put that on there when we can put much more pertinent information like volunteer experience or education or certifications, right? Things like that. And finally, number 10, never include unprofessional contact information. Okay, so you give an email or a voicemail that is maybe crude or immature or inappropriate, right? In any way, you want to change that because if someone reaches out to you or goes to reach out to you and they see that you do have unprofessional contact information, they might just not do it at all because a lot of employers are seeking more mature-minded individuals. And the last thing they want to have to deal with is, someone who's immature and causes them headache. So, moving right along, now let's talk about networking. Okay, we talked about how to get your resume together. So now you got your resume together. What's next? Well, you got to network yourself. You got to put yourself out there as a developer in your community, and you can do this in one of 2 ways. You can do it through online networking or in-person networking. And the interesting part about the tech industry is the number 1 way to get a job is actually the in-person networking, which you would think it would be the opposite, right? You would think that online networking for the tech industry would work much more effectively. But it's the opposite because oftentimes, developer labs and shops, they don't tend to depend too much on recruiters and outside agencies for hires because developers, they tend to all know each other. And so whenever, a company needs a developer, they tend to go to their staff and say, hey, we're hiring, and put out the word. And then they tend to get, internal references. Okay. And so how you can meet these developers at these, these agencies is by going to what's called a meetup. And a meetup is typically, an event somewhere in your community where they talk on a specific subject like coding or programming in Ruby or Python or C#, right? And so after they give a talk or do a workshop, typically there's like a social hour afterwards where you'll have snacks and you'll go around and meet people and just kind of mingle, and that's really your chance to network yourself and to get to know the developers in your area and get to know the job opportunities that are happening now or upcoming ones. And so to find these events, we recommend 2 main sources. Meetup.com, probably the number 1 source because it's for meetups, and then Eventbrite.com, which is kind of just generalized for events in general. Okay. So next, let's go ahead and discuss culture fit. Okay, so it's always best practice to do research to learn about an organization before you apply for a position. It's important for a couple of reasons. So during the interview, it's good to actually know about the company's background, at least a little bit, because it shows you actually care about what they do and not just the paycheck. Again, all companies want to believe you're there for the bigger picture. And number 2, everyone's culture is different. Although, a lot of the, tech offices are pretty laid back, in this day and age, maybe that's not a kind of culture that you want to work with, right, for your career. Maybe you want something maybe a little more corporate, business professional, where you're interacting with stakeholders and clients and things of that nature. So don't waste your time or the employer's time by just applying for any and every job. Make sure you do some research to make sure that if you do get hired, that everyone's going to be happy. Okay, so now let's talk about the online job search. So although the in-person networking is the most effective way to get a job, the online job search is definitely a valid way as well. And so although there's a good amount of job boards online, here are a few that we recommend for based on previous student success. Okay, so Indeed.com, you've probably heard of this one. It's number one job board in probably the U.S. if not the world. Monster.com is another big one. Dice.com is another big one. And so Craigslist down here, you might notice, is not necessarily a job board, but it is local classifieds. And this is great if you're trying to get some experience behind your belt. Maybe trying to build a couple portfolio projects. You can look on Craigslist, and oftentimes you'll find restaurants and bakeries and small businesses looking to build a website. And that's a really great way to not only make some income, but also build up your experience. Okay, so now let's go ahead and reiterate on your contact information, right, and keeping it professional. So although it seems common knowledge, adjusting your email and voicemail during a job search periods can make a big difference on how potential employers view you. Okay, so an example of a good email would be something like john.smith@gmail.com, right? Plain, simple, to the point, and not distracting. A bad example would be something like Johnny, the ladies man 89 at gmail.com, right? It just comes off as a little bit arrogant, a little bit immature, right? It doesn't give a good first impression. So sometimes that's all you get is a first impression. And then voicemail, really, the rule of thumb for this is just it should be short and to the point, right? If I call in to leave you a voicemail that I want you to come in for a job interview, I don't want to have to wait there 30 to 60 seconds just to leave a voicemail, right? I should only have to wait 5 to 10 seconds for you to let me know, to leave a message at the beep, or whatever else it may be. But make sure it's short and to the point. All right, next, let's talk about LinkedIn. Okay, so if you don't already know, LinkedIn is the world's largest networking platform for business professionals. And if you don't have a LinkedIn account, you will need to get one. Okay, and once you get a LinkedIn account, let's talk about how you can, spiff it up to make it the most appealing it can be. Okay, so first things first, we'll notice in the profile we have the photo. Okay, and although it's nothing fancy, it's relatively new, and he's smiling, right? So you always got to make sure that you smile in your photo. If you don't, it can really, really hurt your chances of getting hired. Okay, headline. Tell people about what you're excited about now and the cool things you're doing in the future. Summary, this is just kind of like a 2-3 paragraph blurb about yourself. Experience, that's pretty self-explanatory, right? It's like your online resume. You just list where you worked and the periods you worked there and description of your duties and that kind of thing. Organizations, if you're maybe a Boy Scout leader, Girl Scout leader, right? Is that part of it? Organizations, you participate in regularly, you can list those. Education would be, if you've been to a specific university or some sort of educational institution, gotten a degree, you definitely list that. Adds value. Volunteer experience, this is a great one. If you do have any volunteer experience, a lot of companies look for this. Everyone loves someone who's willing to work for no pay, for a bigger cause. Next section is our skills and expertise. This is actually one of my favorite sections because you can go in here, you can add all your different skills. And as a developer, there's a lot of them, right? You can say HTML and CSS and Java, Ruby, Python, right? Whatever else you have. And then you can have connections come in, which are very much just like your LinkedIn friends. And you can have them endorse you for those skills. The more endorsements you get, the more it adds weight that you can actually perform that skill. And so for recruiters, this is a really good sign that they find a great candidate. Okay. Next, include any honors or awards, right? That's pretty self-explanatory. If you've earned a prize in or out of school, go ahead and post it here. Courses is similar to education, but maybe you just, got certified in a specific, a course, and it maybe wasn't an entire degree dedicated right towards a specific area, maybe just a state certification or something of that nature, right? And then we have projects. Okay, so projects is a really valuable section for developers, because we can come in here and we can list our actual projects we built. And not only can we list the project, we can list the people we collaborated on with the projects, right? And we can describe it, and we can even put links to the project. So this is really great for potential hiring managers, because they can come in here and view your projects and really solidify who you are as a developer before sending you off to their candidate, which is the employer. Okay, and last down here, we've got recommendations. Okay, and recommendations are just like verbal endorsements. Okay, they basically, just summarize their experience working with you and why they would recommend you to, another company. All right. So next, let's talk about GitHub. And GitHub, because it's solely focused around your programming, it's much less complicated than setting up a LinkedIn profile. Okay, so let's take an example, a look at a good GitHub profile. Okay, so right off the bat, we notice we get a smiling photo. Okay, just like LinkedIn, gotta have a smiling photo. Next, she's got a good amount of repositories, right? We don't want 1 or 2 repositories, right? We want probably at a minimum 10, to show that we're active. And you see, as well as that, she's got some followers, right? And that's always good, right? Adds value, insinuates leadership, that kind of stuff. Okay, and so this is really it in a nutshell. This is an example of a good GitHub profile. Nothing too over the top. Just kind of showcases her experience right here through her repositories and all that good stuff. Okay. Next, let's talk about online branding. Okay, so in the tech-driven era, employers often look at online sources that don't have anything to do with you as a professional, but rather who you are as a person in general. Okay, so example of good branding, or good online branding, I should say, is if your Twitter account, Facebook, right, and one of those maybe has a high number of profile followers, or all of them, right? That's not a bad thing, no employer is going to mark down points if you are an influential person on online. However, an example of bad branding would be maybe pictures of you drinking every night, right? And those are constantly posted. So the employer's first impression is going to be, oh, great, this person's going to be partying all the time, which means they're going to come to work all hungover, and they're not going to want to deal with that, right? And even though that, that could be just a false impression, still sometimes that first impression is all you get. So you want to make sure your online branding is up to par. And if you need to go back and adjust your profile and remove some pictures, then do it, because you're only going to help yourself land that job that much easier. All right, next let's talk about the elevator pitch. Okay, so the elevator pitch is a technique that can be used to answer the prompt, tell me about yourself. Okay, so I'm sure all of us recognize this prompt, because it's pretty much the most used icebreaker for all interviews, right? Most interviews start off with, tell me about yourself, whether you're going to interview for McDonald's or going to interview for Google, right? It's just a very commonplace thing to ask. And the funny part about this is most people aren't prepared to answer this question. So normally what happens is they just kind of blurt out what comes to their head. They say, my name is this, and I grew up here, and I like to do this. And a lot of this information we tend to spew out isn't necessarily valuable, and it's not actually adding value to ourselves. So we can really take advantage of this by practicing what's called an elevator pitch. And the structure of an elevator pitch is simple. First, it needs to be 30 to 60 seconds in length, not too short, but not too long. It needs to list three things: what you do well, so your skills; what you want to do, your goals; and why you want to do it, your intent. Okay? And the best part about this is you can practice it. Okay? So when they do ask you this question, you can answer really confidently. And you can imagine that that's going to make a much better impression than someone who's just blurts out random facts, right? So you're going to give yourself that much more of an edge compared to other candidates being asked that same question who are not prepared with an elevator pitch. All right, so now on to the topic of the tech interview. Okay, so tech interviews come in all shapes and sizes, so there's no one way to prepare. Unfortunately not. I wish there was, because it would be so much easier to get people into jobs and make everyone's life just breezy. But that's not the way it is, because all companies have their own little preferred methods of hiring programmers. Okay, so instead of trying to just know it all, it's best just to use common scenarios you may encounter during the interview. Okay, and here's a few sites we recommend to practice your tech interview skills. So the first one is Coderbyte.com. And Coderbyte.com offers daily questions that you can answer, and little problems that constantly keep you improving. And they even have like a score, so you can even see your level go up and actually physically see with your eyes that you're improving as a coder in your skills. And oftentimes you'll find a lot of interview-like questions being asked in Coderbyte. Okay, next we got Codefights.com, and Codefights.com, best way I can describe it, it tells you how to think on your feet, right? Because it pairs you against another developer, and you guys have to build specific project, and so a lot of us get nervous during interviews, right? A lot of us go blank, and so if that's the case, it's good that we can practice somewhere like this, and we don't have to walk into the interview and experience it there. And last, InterviewCake.com is well known for teaching you how to think through interview problems, even if you've never heard them before, and how to describe them in a way that you'll get, if not full credit, at least partial credit because of your methodical approach. Okay, so let's wrap up with the topic of follow-up. Okay, so as in most industries, it's good to follow up with the hiring manager on your submitted applications as well as your previous interviews. Keep in mind that the hiring manager is often cycling through tons of applications, so it helps to have someone reach out to them and make yourself more memorable. And this is so true. We've had so many students that have had this happen. I think it happened just a couple weeks ago where we had a student who went to an interview and they told him he didn't get the job. Okay? And so what he does is, I think he said a couple days later, he sent them an email and said, thank you for the opportunity to interview, and that he appreciated it. And they call him a couple days later and hire him. So what he thought at first was a lost opportunity turned out to be the opportunity. Okay, so never ever assume that you didn't get it just because you haven't heard back, right? Make sure you follow up, if not with email, a phone call, or something, to just keep yourself in the back of the hiring manager's mind. All right, so let's go ahead and open the floor and let's see if anyone has any questions. Okay, so the floor is open. If you have questions, feel free to ask those now. Okay, I don't hear anything. So if that's the case, thanks everyone for stopping by, and happy job hunting out there.